I'm Bruce, and today we're going to build some brackets for the fuselage on my van's RV-12iS that I'm building here in the garage. So one of the first things you need to do whenever you're working on stuff on these Vans aircraft kits is to remove the blue plastic. They put this on there to protect the parts, and it's very satisfying to remove. The next thing is to be sure to write down the part number. You know, the part number is on the plastic, but once you remove it, you're not going to remember that. There's a lot of parts that look similar. Often there's a left and a right version of a part, so if you just write it down first, it makes everything easier. So today we're going to be building some brackets and installing some nut plates. I'm not exactly sure what these do, but we will find out as we go through the build. So what I'm doing here is deburring the edges on the parts. When they're formed, they get sort of a sharp edge, which can lead to cracks. So this is actually a Scotch-Brite wheel mounted on a buffer, and I go through, I get all the edges that I can with this, and then I go and I have another piece of Scotch-Brite wheel that this is actually mounted in a Dremel tool, and I get all the little pieces that I couldn't get with the big Scotch-Brite wheel, you know, all the little corners and crevices and internal portions as well. So some people say it's really important to get everything deburred really well, while other people say that they never deburr anything. I'm not sure what the right answer is, but I prefer to err on the side of caution, so I try and get every part as deburred as much as possible. So once I've got the edges deburred, I'll go ahead and use this tool and deburr the holes. You know, just like the edges, all those holes have a little bit of a sharp edge from the punching process. So this just smooths that out and hopefully will avoid cracks in the future. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use these dies here. These are called dimple dies. You can see they're made to fit together, and they go in a rivet squeezer. And what they'll do is they'll actually dimple some of the holes so that you can fit a flush rivet in them. So I'm going to go ahead and install it in my rivet squeezer, put the dies in. I'll adjust it so that they are basically completely closed. All right, now get the part, look over at the plans, make sure I'm gonna dimple the right side here. And then you just squeeze it. It's not very hard, it's pretty thin aluminum. And now it's dimpled for a flush rivet. So now I'll go and do this for all the holes that need a flush rivet on these parts. Next step is to install these nut plates. You can see that the nut plates are actually dimpled as well. So what I like to do is thread in a fastener. It's actually undersized. So I think this is an 832 nut plate. That's a 632 screw. And then I'll just put a nut on it. So this just helps to hold the nut plate flush with the part that it's being riveted to. You know, you can only put a cleco in one of those holes. So, you know, to prevent the nut plate from kind of flapping around and not getting properly riveted, I like to do this. It might be overkill, but again, it doesn't take that much time, and I do think it makes a better part. So here, putting in a rivet. This is just a traditional rivet. Now I'll go ahead and squeeze it. rivet squeezed. We'll check it with the rivet gauge, make sure I've got the squeezer adjusted properly. Looks good. So now just go ahead and squeeze all the rest of the rivets onto these parts. All right, done. So I've got all the nut plates on. You can see those flush rivets. And then there's the back side. On to the next parts. So these are also going to get flush rivets, but they're going to get a different kind of flush rivet. This is actually a blind type. It's made by Cherry, I believe. You can see it's still a flush rivet, but it's the pulled type. Now, these parts are actually thicker, so instead of dimpling them, I'm going to machine countersink them. Normally, I'd use a drill and a machine countersink, a microstop countersink, but because of the way this flange is bent around, I decided to just use my deburring tool. It's got the same 100-degree angle, but it's easier to use on this sort of strangely bent part. So I just go through and, I'm just trimming and then fitting and making sure that the rivet's going to sit flush. So these are done. You can see that they're countersunk. Go ahead and do the rest of them. All right, now these nut plates, you can see they are not dimpled. They're made to go on the back where it's flush mount, but I'm going to go ahead and install them the same way, use the screws and the nuts and cleco them. So go ahead and put in the rivets. You can see these are the blind flush rivets. I've gone ahead and put in the proper size nose on my pneumatic rivet gun. And I'll go ahead and pull these. These have a serrated shank, which my rivet gun doesn't like to eject. So you may hear me sort of pulling the trigger multiple times to get the broken shank to eject. So we're done. You can see, just like the other ones, these are flush rivets, but the back definitely looks different. They're hollow, so they're not real strong, but all they have to do is keep that nut plate from turning. All right, so we finished the brackets, showed how to prep the parts, used a couple different types of rivets, and installed the nut plates. Hope you enjoyed watching. I'll put my Instagram account below, and feel free to follow me, like me, all those YouTubey things.